here is in the parking lot. So go ahead and get started. I do want to say thank you for being here. Welcome to my district, where you can buy a Mercedes, you can enjoy a game of Topgolf, and you can store your data all within a mile from here. Holmes Community College, I thank you so much for allowing us the opportunity to have this space today. I want to thank Chairman Williams and Chairman Zuber for giving me free rein on doing something outside the box instead of having a hearing at the Capitol where each speaker has 15 minutes and then sitting in front of a committee asking questions. We wanted to do something where we had a panel to give our speakers more of an opportunity to have an organic conversation so we can all learn something from them and then they can learn something from each other. So I wanted to say thank you, speakers. I'm going to let y'all go on the stage and introduce each of yourselves and your company. And just a second. Want to say thanks to Shelby Britt at the Capitol for taking good care of us and making this happen. I really do appreciate you, Shelby. And then want to just ask the legislators that are here in the room if they'll stand up, because you guys really matter. You're going to be the ones making legislation this year. So stand up. Thank you so much for being here. Really does mean the world to me. Gerard, come on up. Gerard Gibbert is our moderator. Many of you hear his voice every day on Super Talk, like myself, and you're at the podium. And but what makes Gerard so special is he's actually owned a technology company, so he probably knows as much about technology as anybody in the room, to be perfectly honest. We appreciate you for being here and doing this for us. Your schedule just today was ferocious, so thank you for taking the time to be here. Now, if the panel would just stand up, and I'd like industry to be on the left side, and I'd like Mississippi to be on the right side. So my three Mississippi speakers here, and my industry this way. And then if y'all will please start Mississippi introducing yourselves, and then industry introduce yourselves, that would be great. Thank you. And welcome again. Everybody won't have a microphone. You might sit here.
All right, got everybody? Yep.
George, at 3 o'clock we need to stop, so I'll give you that heads up. And
Okay.
at 3 o'clock, if y'all just stand when we finish and gather together, we want to take a picture. So I'm just OCD.
Welcome. A lot of brain power up here. We hope to learn some stuff today. Appreciate you guys having me and appreciate this opportunity. Thank you to Representative Jill Ford and Senator Bart Williams for inviting me to serve in this role as moderator today. So I'm going to start with a question for Danny from NVIDIA. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought they already did that, so I got here late.
That's okay.
My fault.
So I am Courtney Taylor, the Executive Director of Mississippi's Office of Workforce Development, also known as Accelerate Mississippi.
Check. I'm Bill Cork, Executive Director of the Mississippi Development Authority.
To keep their stamps, Central District Public Service Commissioner for Mississippi.
JJ Childress with Microsoft, oversee an initiative called TechSpark. I am based in El Paso, Texas, covering my other colleague JJ, who's the more handsome astronaut-looking fellow based here in Jackson, but happy to be supporting him.
I'm John Ray, CEO of Whisper Systems in Batesville, Mississippi. We also have a manufacturing facility in Nesbitt. Thank you for inviting us.
Hey, I'm Danny DeVito with NVIDIA. I cover the higher ed and research team here at NVIDIA.
Hi, Keith Blystone, Chief of Staff with Ocean Aero. We are a manufacturer of autonomous drones for the ocean, based out of Gulfport, Mississippi.
airborne drones and we got underwater drones represented here today, right? Mississippi companies, and we're proud of that. So for Danny at NVIDIA, we're today in a building that is focused on workforce development here at one of our fabulous community colleges. This is the Ridgeland campus of Holmes Community College. What should we be thinking about with respect to ensuring that our student population is prepared for the task for performing the jobs of the future, especially with this explosion in artificial intelligence that's largely being driven by NVIDIA technology?
Absolutely. Thank you. Great question. I think there is a lot we could be doing. Technology is moving extremely fast. And sometimes technology, and most times technology moves faster than we can update curriculums in schools. So I think we're seeing an evolution in how learning is happening. And obviously community colleges and universities are really important. But programs like what Maine has put together, I haven't seen a lot like it in other states. I cover a huge territory here at NVIDIA. So I think continuing to invest in programs like what we have with Maine is going to allow people to become educated and allow the workforce to evolve and keep up with as fast as technology is moving without, waiting for curriculums to adapt to what's happening. Now, hopefully, ideally, we can, the curriculums can keep up, but AI is just moving really fast, as is, the rest of the tech sector.
Yeah. So for Dr. Taylor, in addition to workforce development, preparing students before perhaps they've entered the workforce as full-time employees, we also have in the private sector a responsibility to ensure that those skills are maintained and constantly refreshed and updated. I can speak from experience, having run a technology company for 33 years. I felt like I put a few hundred people through college, the amount of money I spent on continuous training, but it's necessary to be competitive. So it's not just the responsibility of our education community. This is a responsibility that falls on the private sector as well.
Yeah, I agree completely. And the private sector spends, it dwarfs what the public sector spends on training and upskilling. It's really targeting those skills that make them better corporate citizens too, as you move forward, better decision making, things like that. But there's a lot of efforts ongoing, and we're going to need more, but they're going to look different in the future, I think, than they have in the past. It's not about checking boxes at this point. It's enhancing reasoning skills and things like that, so that they can continue to tackle the new technology when it comes in, because we know at this point it's not going to stop.
Yeah. So for Microsoft, and this really could be for anybody, honestly, just with respect to the issue of training and skills acquisition, when you think about artificial intelligence and the way that is really shaping our world, and this really is applied to technology historically, there are kind of two aspects of it. There's the end user aspect of it, to just be a proficient user of technology. Then there's the creation and the development aspect of it. And there are job opportunities and skills required for both. How should we think about that here in Mississippi? Well,
particularly as we're moving into the age of artificial intelligence, where value in the workforce was created for, the paradigm that we know, it was having the right answers. With artificial intelligence, it's the ability to ask the right questions. And if you can ask the right questions, where that line gets blurred, think about AI in education. There's teaching AI skills, but then there's teaching with AI. How does an individual educator use AI skills to drive outcomes in the classroom? But it starts blending. If you could ask the right questions, you could actually get closer to a technical solution without having to invest in a computer science education degree that you would have to do in years past. So yeah. I think we're just moving quicker down the learning curve here.
You're probably familiar with the Google startup Anthropic that focuses on AI, and I saw an ad not too long ago where they're looking for prompt engineers. and that's a job that will pay $235,000 a year. No college education required. They say you need to be good with video games and have a hacker spirit to be a good prompt engineer, which is probably true, honestly. So this question would be for John. You guys have had incredible success. We're very proud of you, as a matter of fact, in the state of Mississippi. You know, from the outside world, Mississippi, I can attest to this, having gone to Wall Street and raised a bunch of money to scale a technology company. We're usually not thought of as being a place where innovation occurs, but that's actually not the case. And your company is a great example of that. Tell us exactly what you guys do and how Mississippi is a great place to do business.
Well, I'll give you a little bit of background.
Get your mic, get your mic.
I'll give you a little bit of background where I started in technology and startups, okay? And that was many years ago. I was with an IBM and spent 25 years there, another 28 years in startups. Well, the startups, even in IBM, you think about IBM and bureaucracy and big companies and everything, you think, gosh, how can you work in a startup inside a large company? But we did. We learned on a couple of occasions during my 25 years there, we concluded that we need to bring the process of a new development outside the normal path of production and development. And so we did that, and we called it a fast path. And that's something I think we need in Mississippi, is to fast path technology. And I call it a toe tag for technology in Mississippi. Now, I've talked to Bart about that. I think you guys ought to be thinking about that. So, but anyway, if you think about what we've done in Mississippi, as I was in startups in Austin, Texas, my board wanted me to send jobs to India. And I thought, well, I really didn't want to do that. I thought, well, going to school here at Mississippi State, I thought, I knew the computer science department. I was very familiar with them. I came over, met the head of the department, brought in 10 students from computer science who were graduating within 6 months, all very high level, good grades. We ended up hiring 17. I built a development center in Mississippi State, put them in a double-wide trailer just behind the High Performance Computing Center. And they were very successful throughout that. So, and one of the things I think we need to be doing, continue to do in Mississippi, is the fact we've got the technology. We've got the curriculum at Mississippi State. Ole Miss has a lot of good things going on, obviously Southern. So I think bringing new companies in, and I think we need to be competitive. We need to be competitive in processes, whether it's getting out of the bureaucracy. I've gotten 2 calls within the last 6 months about, one was Louisiana. Would you be interested in moving your company to Louisiana? We'd like to have a drone company in Louisiana. So we need to be competitive. I don't want to move to Louisiana, okay? We don't want to be in Louisiana. But that's the thing. We've got to compete with what are the incentives and what are the processes that are taking place in other states, and to make sure that we're competitive in that regard.
Bill, talk about that. The MDA and economic developers, I know Joey Deason's in our audience today that I've had the honor of working with. He's the executive director for the Madison County Economic Development Authority. But when you guys are deep entrenched in these economic development projects, there are a couple of things that seem to have maybe leapfrogged even availability of workforce, and that's power, and just how fast can you get us through this process? What are we doing in Mississippi to really streamline that endeavor?
Well, Danny mentioned it. She said, speed of technology is growing rapidly, and it's accelerating exponentially. We've got to be able to deal with speed to market from all aspects of the physical location of these companies. And Gerard, you know better than anybody else, how that was successful in securing AWS in Madison. Let me just take a step back, though, and kind of answer the broader question as to what Governor Reeves' administration has tried to do to tackle the technology issue. It's one of the chief complaints we've heard in public forums is, why aren't we doing more in tech? Why aren't we trying to be more technologically advanced? And we went about the business trying to sort that out. What could Mississippi be doing? So the federal government funded through an EDA grant of $1 million, we brought our Mississippi Research Consortium together, led by Joe Donovan from MDA, to develop a state technology innovation plan. And what that did was, and we did this over a year ago, what that did was baseline, kind of do case studies and baseline us against other states. What are other states doing? What are we not doing? Come up with a SWOT analysis for our state versus other states, and then conduct an inventory of the things that we could be doing to advance the ecosystem and tech and innovation in the state. One of the things that came out of that I discovered was there was a lot of discussion about what I call putting the ornaments on the tree. You know, having a tech innovation district or doing this program at Mississippi State, or, you know, there was 1,000 different things that you could copycat from other states. But we lacked the tree trunk and the basic root ball, if you will, to hang all those ornaments on. And we got the governor convinced very early on, and through his leadership and with the help of the legislature, to put a site development grant program together to help develop 30 sites across the state, to focus on power development, to focus on regulatory reform, to focus on the basic things to make the ones and zeros, okay, to make the compute and the data centers happen. That is now happening. Amazon's the first. In about 2 weeks, we'll announce another massive cluster in the state. I just flew up with the governor to XAI and toured the Colossus data center in Memphis. They've got one place to grow, and that's south. We've got major hyperscalers looking at the state with probably another massive announcement in the first quarter of next year. That didn't just start like yesterday. That's been going on for about the last 4 or 5 years, if not longer. And so we're now starting to see the fruits of that happen. I believe that that momentum that's been picked up, particularly with the AWS announcements and the announcements to come, put Mississippi on the map. Second thing we wanted to try to do is reduce the regulatory barrier to entry. And so one of the things the legislature that we used as a vehicle through the AWS special session was to help get regulatory reform and power generation permitting in the state. And that's something I know Commissioner Stamps will address. But no other state's doing that. No other state's setting a clock on how fast you can develop power. That's something that's really, really interesting that creates a competitive advantage for us. And then you begin to layer on top of that the other things that we're seeing. We're working on, with NVIDIA right now, working on an MOU with the state to advance workforce development and collaboration. We're taking parts of that technology innovation plan and where they make sense, we're helping to deploy money. In the AWS special session, we got over $40 million of special funding to help advance the ecosystem around AI. So I guess I want to just kind of go back to basics and say we started with the foundation, and now we're trying to grow the tree and grow the branches that we can eventually hang the ornaments off of. Because we're not going to get 1,000 Microsoft computer programmers in the state if the rest of this ecosystem doesn't exist. So.
Yeah, thank you. Kevin, with Ocean Aero Chief of Staff, had the honor of interviewing your CEO, Kevin, a couple of weeks ago. Fascinating technology. This is a company that didn't start in Mississippi, but migrated our way and is now located on the beautiful Mississippi Gulf Coast. Tell us what the attraction was, moving from California to Mississippi for this high-tech company.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say really a few different things. You know, one is if you're going to be in the business of shipbuilding, boat building, like we are, first of all, the Gulf Coast is a phenomenal place to be. All right, so all the way from Texas over to Florida, having the ability to, you know, be linked in with the supply chain, having the ready workforce, be it fabrication, be it electronic assembly, and the like, just a you know, fantastic place to be. I'd say secondarily, we sell into multiple markets, so offshore energy and maritime sciences, but a large piece of our business is selling into the Department of Defense. U.S. Navy is by far our biggest customer. And so as you kind of look through the congressional landscape, you know, I've had the ability to kind of work in multiple states and countries in my career. You know, you'd be hard pressed to find another state in the union that has more of a pro-defense focus than the state of Mississippi. And so having that, you know, tailwind at our back is hugely valuable, you know, both on a federal and a state level. And then lastly, just great partners, you know, in the state that were incredibly welcoming. You know, we moved the company from San Diego, California, to the Port of Gulfport, opening our doors in January of 22. And so be that, you know, University of Southern Miss, which was supremely helpful in helping us make that transition, be that the Port of Gulfport, also MDA, you know, Bill mentioned kind of speed to market, and certainly that's incredibly valuable for large companies, the Microsofts of the world. That's also incredibly valuable for small kind of startup companies as well. You know, when we came in, we had 19 employees. We're proud that now we have 65 employees continuing to grow, kind of high technology, high paying jobs. You know, even stuff like having our ability to be on the Port of Gulfport in the first place, having access to that facility, you know, you can argue that that's a leap of faith to allow someone of our scale to do that. So, you know, huge credit to MDA and others for kind of leaning forward and kind of welcoming us with open arms. So I'd say it's a combination of all those things. And, you know, we're supremely glad to be here. You know, candidly, we wouldn't have seen a lot of the growth and success, you know, had we not made that transition to Mississippi.
Appreciate that. Public Service Commissioner for the Central District, Keither Stamps. I think Bill sitting next to you would, and other economic developer people in the room would probably agree that power, energy, may be the new currency in economic development. Where does Mississippi stand? Are we kind of an all the above state? We embrace all forms of power, or do we have a focus one way or another? And how do we, again, fast track through some of the regulatory burden to make sure that we can meet the power needs of prospective economic development investments?
Well, I appreciate it, Rod. At the Public Service Commission, when we came aboard in January, we set a goal of creating 100,000 jobs and $100 billion of economic development, and power generation is going to be key to that. Solving some of America's big problems, like storing more of the world's data in America, it makes Mississippi a golden opportunity for investment. I-20 and I-55 are great tech gateways because of some of the investments that have been made by the federal and state government over the last 5 or 6 years, and continuing to wipe up some of the regulatory hurdles. At the Public Service Commission, I think we're saving about $70,000 a month over what we did last year, just by trimming the fat and streamlining the processes, because we believe that our role is not just to make the services reliable, but to grow the pie, grow the user base of the state, and effective partnerships are key to doing so. Our focus when it comes to power generation is all of the above, but primarily natural gas and nuclear are going to be the ticket to ride us to the future, just like the investment in Greenville in Washington County with the AWS deal. And if we're going to increase the productivity and the production at the Grand Gulf Nuclear Power Plant, it's going to require us to have some hyperscalers and other folks to help partner with Mississippi to grow that institution.
I'll ask this question of John with Whisper Systems. How important is it to have an ecosystem of high-tech companies concentrated in the same area? That tends to be what we've seen as the industry has evolved. There's a lot of knowledge sharing.
It's very important. You know, I spent time in Austin, Texas, and also Silicon Valley. So the fact that as you move in your career, that you can move across the street and go to work for somebody else, okay? And so the more high-tech companies and the more skills that we have developed in this state, the better off. It's going to be more of an attraction, because I've interviewed a lot of people and try to bring people to Mississippi. I said, well, gosh, there's only, if you go away, or my job, I don't have growth here, I don't have anywhere else to go. I've got to go back to Texas or Raleigh, North Carolina, or, you know, Nashville or somewhere else. So we need more here. Technology companies here, we can help each other as a team because we can grow together.
Yeah. For Courtney, I've been to the Communiversity several times in East Mississippi, and I don't know if you guys have ever been there before. I've hosted the show there. East Mississippi Community College, and really in conjunction with a number of private sector entities in the area. This, to me, looked like the model that we should be employing in all of our community colleges in the state of Mississippi, because they're literally training people for the jobs that the local industries are hiring using their training programs and working on those together. So you've got the education community working directly with the private sector to tailor these programs, because they need people and they need them to be productive day one. How can we expand that and do better at that?
So yeah, I think the other critical partner there is your economic developers. So I think anywhere where you see your economic developers at the table with your education entity, Holmes is one of those places. I think you start seeing a lot faster investments and a lot more dedicated efforts to it. I think there are versions of this around the state. I think they need continued, not just investments, but paring down what doesn't need to be taught anymore, what does need to be taught. Industries have to be at the table in a real way. They can't just show up and say, oh, we need some people, and then disappear when they get 2 people. So I think that's a critical piece of it. I think it's also really critical that funding has to be slightly tolerant, not completely tolerant, of a little bit of risk. We have pretty good idea this thing is coming. We need to put some money into it. Maine, the Mississippi Artificial Intelligence Network was one of those, like, okay, we know this is coming. This was really before Amazon and all of that. Let's do some really good things with this, and now it's completely here, and it's great. We've got other investments, AIM Up and things like that, where we're investing in technology to support the industries. And in some cases, we're having to lead the industry because they're busy making their widgets and their things, and by lead, I mean create a place for everybody to come together and talk about it and say, okay, is this what's happening? This is what we're seeing. Is this what Mississippi? Is this what we need to be doing? And usually it creates some thought leadership among everybody. But I think very targeted, very direct things, a little bit of tolerance for risk, and a lot of understanding that, to the point made earlier, this is changing really fast. So we don't want to get over invested, and then it has to be where the people live for training. They'll drive for work, but it's really hard to drive for training. You can't drive an hour and a half if you're not getting paid. So that's a lot of what we've been doing. We work with the legislature, the governor, to try to expand these training programs to be where the need is to be trained. Some of it can be done online, but there's still some room to grow in the online training place. But a lot of it can be done in person. So anyway, that's kind of.
It's a great facility, great model that just looks like it would serve our state well if we could replicate that across the state. That's no easy task for sure, but something I think would provide value.
Yeah, I came to Mississippi because of that. So it's a
Okay.
workforce paradise up there. So yeah, I think it's a model I'm obviously pretty tied to because I
Sure.
was there.
For Microsoft, I think it was in September, you guys announced a partnership with Constellation Energy to restart 3 Mile Island to power a data center project that's planned, a hyperscale data center facility at 3 Mile Island. And so you'll know, there are 2 reactors, not restarting the one that melted down, those of you that are old enough to remember that incident, but the one that did not. That's being met with some objection, as to be expected. And I guess really the question is for everybody to think about, do you see nuclear power as a way to satisfy this insatiable appetite for energy that data centers have, and artificial intelligence need data centers?
I could say this: we're at a really important nexus, right? Where we have a once in a generational opportunity for the United States, where we have to double our manufacturing footprint over the next 10 to 15 years just to maintain global competitiveness, right? That's requiring us to put infrastructure in place to be able to meet that demand. We look at the geopolitical, influences of Russia, Ukraine, supply chains in China, and the need to position, America first to make sure that we don't run into the issues. Whether it's a data center, whether it's traditional manufacturing, we're seeing this need for power because we're at an age of the same devices, same kind of widgets, whatever is being built will be built, but how they're built is what's different. Requires more energy, requires smarter agreements around water and resource management. So we have to take that portfolio approach to find the power and the resources to kind of meet that need. And I think it creates very unique opportunities for places like Mississippi, who are exploring and staying open-minded and quickly realizing that the growth or the path to prosperity is really through power. You need that core infrastructure to really be able to meet just the 21st century economic demands.
Latest data I saw, DeKeither, I'm sure you're familiar with this as well, Bill. Data centers consume about 9 gigawatts of power. We have 1,231 capacity nationwide. That's expected to double, perhaps triple, by 2030 is the data I'm looking at, which means we got to build more power generation and transmission, right?
We must do it immediately. We have to invest in nuclear here in Mississippi. I'm looking forward to maybe not the first one in the country, but at least the second SMR in the country to be right here in Mississippi.
Small modular reactor.
Correct.
By the way.
The small modular reactors are going to be critical to us moving our power generation forward and sustaining our population and growing our industry.
Can I double click on that?
Yeah, sure, please.
Look, this needs to really be underscored, okay? If you take a look at any graph you look at global GDP, for instance, it is almost auto-correlated with the availability of energy. If you're going to grow your economy, you have to do it through energy production. Period, cut and dry. It's always been that way. This isn't new. We just happen to see it accelerating. One of the things that I hope as we talk about new generation, there's going to be a lot of talk about that. There already is. But there's energy opportunities right in front of us. You could probably build a brand new data center for what the city of Jackson could do just in energy efficiency. So we have to be using energy smarter. And that's where I think technology comes in and has a major possible opportunity for us with advanced artificial intelligence, smart systems in buildings. All this technology that we're talking about can actually help us solve the energy crisis so that we're much more efficient. Mississippi should be a leader in that. In addition to providing the data centers and the power generation, we should be developing the next technologies to make us the most energy efficient. Because Mississippi's small enough where if we can get everybody to reduce their energy consumption by 30%, that's almost 2 gigawatts of power we could generate right there alone, and based on current state usage numbers. So these are all things that are create economic opportunity for the state. We're all over this right now. MDA is home to the state's energy office. We've got a brand new state energy director with a massive background in this kind of stuff. We're working on new strategies to recommend to the legislature over the coming years about how we get in this game. And I think, we need to think about not the scarcity of energy, but the abundance of opportunity that this scarcity will create for economic opportunity for the state. And that's some of the things we should be capitalizing.
Yeah. Danny from NVIDIA, there's no question that artificial intelligence, which is paramount to a lot of lawmakers, both at the state and the federal level, are concerned about ethics and privacy related to this evolving technology. We haven't done a whole lot here from a regulatory perspective in our state, but we have several lawmakers here today that are interested, of course, in approaching that and coming up with the sort of policies, laws that protect society, but also are so overbearing that they impede innovation. What advice would NVIDIA give to us about that?
I think AI safety and AI ethics is a huge topic, and it should be a topic that is discussed right alongside of AI. I think there's an opportunity with the folks at Maine, I know, are working on courses in AI ethics and AI safety, because as we're training the workforce in AI, we should always be considering AI safety and ethics. And, we've, at our company, have developed a lot of content around on those topics. And so I think it's a part of the training. I think, a big thing that's been really inspiring to me just coming here and talking to politicians is the openness and the acknowledgement that, I don't know about this and I want to learn about this before we make any decisions that could impact the state. We were talking last night about some legislation in my home state of Georgia on cyber a few years ago, and it was legislation, I can't remember what it was called, but it was making hacking illegal, which sounds really great, but we had a lot of cyber researchers at Georgia Tech that then couldn't do their job. Yeah, we have some nods because it was a big deal in Georgia at the time. The politicians quickly kind of reversed that order. But we don't want to do that in AI because we don't want to kind of stifle, we don't want to stifle any startups, any businesses that are starting around AI. We don't want to stifle research. So I think, the attitude that, the legislatures and the folks here want to become educated is really big. And I think part of the workforce development should include training classes on AI ethics. And, they're very broad, because it depends on what kind of AI you're doing. Are you building large language models? You want to make sure there's no bias in the models. Are you building self-driving cars? There's a lot of, questions around safety in these self-driving car algorithms. So we really could have a whole panel based on that. But it's definitely, I would say, make sure you're educated, make sure you're doing, panels like these. This is a great panel, a lot of ideas, and talking to the experts before you make any rash decisions on legislation.
Well, for example, self-aware AI, which right now is kind of theoretical.
Right.
But you could, I believe, make the mistake of crafting regulation around that before it's actually fully baked and invented, and then that may stifle the invention and the application of it.
It could stifle the invention. You wouldn't want it to stifle, some of these great companies that we're attracting, not just big companies, but startups too. So it's definitely a balance, just like everything else. Yeah. But and I think the more, especially, as people are coming into the AI workforce, I think I read that the folks at Maine are doing some research and some studies around AI ethics, and we have a whole kind of AI ethics principles of trustworthy AI framework that could be a part of the learnings here.
John and Kevin, are you incorporating artificial intelligence in your wares, in your products? And if you are, if you would, John, tell us what sort of guardrails you're putting around that to protect against privacy and ethical issues.
We are starting to incorporate AI, and so we're working with companies on the chipsets to do that. That's by as far as, I'm not a technical person, so I'm not going to tell y'all any secret technical stuff, so I'll stop there, okay?
Kevin.
But we are.
Yeah, we absolutely are. So, as you think through stuff like transit, to John's point, you need to put the right guardrails in place, but AI can be incredibly useful for things like obstacle avoidance. How do you make sure you're not hitting things? How do you make sure you're evading threats in a particular area? If you classify a target, you don't know what it is. How do you take an evasive maneuver to protect yourselves? How do you stay out of shipping lanes so that, these autonomous systems aren't becoming a nuisance to, larger manned markets that have been around for some time? So I think that all of those things we absolutely want to embrace. At the same time, we want to make sure that we always have humans in the loop when it comes to, other decisions you might make. So any types of different payloads you might put on drones, you want to make sure that humans are in the loop to have the right checks and balances for, decisions that could kind of have lasting consequences. Danny mentioned it's a balance like everything. We want to kind of embrace the positive side of it, because otherwise I think we miss a huge opportunity. At the same time, we want to do so in a very responsible manner, which is, a kind of a discussion we have all the time.
Yeah. I know from the IT industry perspective, it's very convoluted from the perspective of who's your competitor, who's your partner, who's your customer. And I tell the story frequently that at any point in time in my career, being in the IT infrastructure business, AT&T was our customer, our competitor, and a vendor to us all at the same time. So from a Microsoft's perspective, this advent of artificial intelligence and cloud computing for workloads, that's starting to spawn lots of interesting partnerships between companies, right? So we're seeing Zoom, for example, which would be a competitor to Teams, but they're working with AI solutions that Microsoft and Amazon have to incorporate into their application software. We're going to see more of this, and how should we think about that from a state perspective, if at all?
Well, I think it's a super interesting time because artificial intelligence is not a single purpose tool. You know, when we think about technology, it will be something that and is already being incorporated across industries and segments. And so kind of the issue with IT or technology is that it is cross-sector. It undermines or underpins lots of different economic engines, that are creating value. And we're very much at an early stage, right, where you're seeing, new partnerships, somebody that has an AI engine that could actually bring the context that an industry partner may have deep expertise in, may have data on, that is able to optimize and take that breakthrough a little bit further and faster than would happen, before. And so I think from a skilling perspective, the way that you message and ingrain, AI isn't going to take your job, but somebody with AI skills will. And it's the same thing with broader businesses, small businesses, medium businesses, established businesses, is how to understand and ingrain the basic understanding of this technology to maintain economic competitiveness, across sectors. The state and different governing agencies can do a great job of helping support not just attracting new businesses and developing that existing, or developing new talent to come into the workforce, but supporting the digital transformation of those incumbent businesses. Those businesses that have that deep expertise that may be working in the maritime industry, right? That have context on how to build a ship, that will know that that this is a technology solution or this is a mechanical engineering solution, and have that discernment to know which solution to kind of leap forward. So I think equipping those traditional business support agencies or organizations, think of your chambers, think of your workforce development agencies, but equipping them with a new, putting new arrows in their quiver, in terms of how to empower those businesses to succeed in the 21st century economy.
Bill, I know your primary function at the Mississippi Development Authority is to attract new industry into the state or help existing industries expand. But with the explosion of artificial intelligence, when you think about our primary industries of agriculture, manufacturing, distribution, how do we make sure these companies don't get left behind and that they adopt and embrace this new technology? Because there's use cases for all of
It's a very good question, but the truth is they're already ahead of the state. I mean, these companies know that this is an existential threat to their business if they don't get on board with it, and industry is going to lead the way. You're seeing that here on the panel.
Yeah.
I'm trying to learn every day. In fact, I just signed up. I'm one of 6 people at MDA now that has Microsoft Copilot built into its system, and I'm trying to figure out how the heck is this thing going to replace my secretary, So it's really a challenge to keep up. Government trying to keep up with industry.
Sure.
And so I want to allay the concerns here. If you think the state's going to lead out on this, you're sadly mistaken, because most of these companies have a hard time keeping up with each other. So to expect government, which moves at the speed of government, to do that. But I will say this, I think what we need to do is what Danny pointed out. We need to create the guardrails around this technology, because when I hear the word artificial intelligence, the way I interpret it in my small mind is it's just like hiring another staff person. Intelligence is just like hiring another person. And I know you don't want to kind of personalize the technology, but it really is. You're going to have to think, does that technology provide the ethics that I want? Does that technology create the safety that I want? Is that technology going to enhance my productivity or not? You could apply those same things every time you're trying to hire another person to come into your organization. You're going to ask the same questions. I can sit down in between Copilot, Grok, and OpenAI, all of which I'm using regularly. I can literally design and build my own graphics, issue a press release, put it into an email, all without having to go to any professional staff people to do that now. So the question is, are those tools that we are going to be promoting, are they going to be the kind of people we'd want to hire? That's an ethics question and a philosophical question, and I do think that's where the state and regulatory bodies can start to begin to think, okay, do we want criminals running around our enterprise? Do we want unsafe people running around our enterprise? If you think of it, if you personalize it that way, I think it helps to frame the argument about how government should interact in policing this new industry.
Courtney, are there some services that Accelerate Mississippi perhaps could provide? Is there a role here for them to work with private sector companies just to ensure adoption of these new technologies?
Maybe not on the adoption side, but I think on the comfort side of the individual humans, it's working alongside a collaborative environment, which is what Bill was getting at. I think ultimately it's working with our training partners to make sure policies allow these things to be embedded in different training programs, so that people learn to get comfortable with the technology, how to use it ethically, responsibly, all the things that kids in college aren't necessarily doing today, because they're just copying and pasting and throwing stuff in there, which defeats the purpose of it. But how to use the chat GPTs as like a super Google, and let everything get down in there. But I think it's really driving the policy to allow for it and encouraging the training providers and the educators where feasible, which the educators are ahead of us in some scenarios as well with this, and so they know those things. But really making sure that the government piece of it doesn't get in the way, but also does protect the individuals and the people who aren't quite there yet.
DeKeither, how do we stack up against other states, particularly neighboring states? Of course, in economic development, we're competing with all of them and often competing with foreign countries abroad as well. And again, this energy issue being today's, I think, most valuable currency in economic development, how do we stack up from just a speed to market, our regulatory framework, just a hassle-free experience? Because these big economic development projects are laden with lots of obstacles.
Well, inside of every problem, there's promise. And that promise is in this room. We were able to sit down in January, discuss the issue, take it to the legislature. I think we spent, 3 or 4 nights in the governor's mansion until wee hours of the morning negotiating, go to the legislature, and we just started breaking ground on projects this fall. So an 8-9 month time frame of being able to go from decision to sticking a shovel in the dirt shows that Mississippi is ready to move forward. We got the effective partners in the House and the Senate lined up. We got a great team in place. I look at our role at the Public Service Commission. We're kind of like the offensive guards of the whole ball game. Bill and the governor are like the quarterbacks. Those mayors and supervisors out there are like the wide receivers and tight ends, and we just got to make sure we do what we're supposed to do in our lane to make them effective in their lanes. And we're doing that, and we're doing it over and over again across all 22 of my counties. We're going through and inventorying every industrial park and identifying all the utility challenges in each industrial park, because many of our local supervisors and boards of aldermen have not made the investments in site development. So not only should they look at what the state is investing in site development, now we have counties and cities investing in their own sites to make them marketable, because they want to compete and they want to be in the ball game of Mississippi's future, because we have about 1.7 million acres of unused farmland. So now how can we take that 1.7 million acres of unused farmland, line it up down I-55 and I-20, and create a tech gateway for future economic development, and so landowners can diversify their investment portfolios with land they're not getting any revenue from, and grow Mississippi.
When Microsoft thinks about making a major investment, say as they are doing across the world, but we just talked about the investment in hyperscale facility near 3 Mile Island there, when you're evaluating states and evaluating sites, what kind of floats up to the top is your priorities in the things that the company thinks about? Is it workforce? Is it infrastructure, connectivity, energy, tax and regulatory reform? We've talked mostly about technical issues today, but haven't talked about those that often enter the equation. How do you guys think about that?
It really is all of the above, but one word that really jumps, out is ecosystems, right? It is the entire supply chain of, a data center is a massive, investment, requires, switches, routers, cabling, the power, it requires the workforce from the contractors to be able to build out and build it to new specifications, particularly critical and secure environments, right? So you need that entire workforce, stack. Once you bring a site, online, then you need the talent to maintain and sustain, the growth of that operation. So it's working with partners like community colleges to establish data center academies to have the talent to staff these and the talent to to the standards that we often need to meet, with very, very high standards, particularly DoD contracts that will require the highest amount of security that, possible. So I think what you need to do within an ecosystem, and this is always a challenge, you'll have ingredients in a state or a broader country. You may even have some good recipes, but the ecosystem is a kitchen that is helping coordinate and making sure the handoffs from infrastructure to talent to tax incentives to policy are really lined up to actually run a restaurant and make it profitable. And I think the regions where we tend to invest and where we jump are those areas where you have that really tight-knit ecosystem, and the community shows up as one and can talk about how all of these pieces are collaborating together, how they're coordinating, and not just showing up at the time of a site selection meeting, but have a history of working together and really solving and mobilizing to kind of meet whatever industrial problem might be popping up.
Danny, when you think about those ecosystems, and I suspect that to a great extent that's a part of NVIDIA's thought process as well, that there are several elements required to make an investment viable. In the state of Mississippi, when you look at our underserved communities, that's where we typically lack the full ecosystems. How can we leverage technology, artificial intelligence, or really just forge private partnerships with companies such as NVIDIA to help develop those areas of our state?
I think it's all in workforce development now. That I know, Gerard, you follow Jensen, our CEO.
I do.
As you follow a lot of people, and he's a very interesting person, not like a typical CEO. And so, coming to NVIDIA and saying, oh, here's a big opportunity to make a bunch of money, that goes well with a lot of CEOs, and that's kind of not where his head is at. His head, and this kind of trickles down to all of our company, is that he wants to solve hard problems. And a hard problem that he's really interested in solving right now is the underserved communities. And we really don't want to be a part of the problem when you think about the digital divide. So as far as things that we can do, there's been a lot of talk on this panel about energy. And a lot of, I was listening to a lot of what we were saying about energy, and a lot of what we were saying, we could replace the word energy with compute. And they're connected, right? Because you need the energy for the compute. And when I talk about compute, I'm talking about the computers that are big enough to do AI. So these are much larger than the laptop that you have at home. So these data centers that we're already investing in, I would look at the compute as an infrastructure investment in the state of Mississippi, in the people of Mississippi, and that allows for training, that allows for researchers in the state to be able to solve big problems. I was talking to Representative Ford and Senator Williams last night. I had a meeting yesterday at the Med Center of these researchers that are trying to cure cancer, and they need compute. So that is, a big place of investment. And I love what you said too about building the relationship over time. A lot of folks, they see the NVIDIA stock price and they come and they say, hey, we want to partner. And that's like, you give us some money and we'll put your logo somewhere. Back to the hard problems. That's not a hard problem. So that's not, interesting to Jensen. But if you have a relationship over time, maybe some of that happens. Some of those are kind of symptoms of solving the hard problem. So I think starting with the workforce development, building on the great program that Maine has already put together, I think that is a great future of Mississippi. So to the tree and the trunk analogy from Bill here, I consider, a supercomputer, a state supercomputer, a central compute resource, part of the trunk. Definitely not the decoration. All the great jobs that it creates are the decorations.
Is everybody familiar with the acronym MAIN, what that stands for? Mississippi Artificial Intelligence Network, Dr. Colin Napier, Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College. It's really a unique program, honestly, and you can go look that up and scan the QR code and sign up for all sorts of training, and you don't need any prior experience for a lot of those classes. It's excellent, and I think it's a big part of our workforce development and just skills maintenance as well. You guys happen to see Google's announcement, their new quantum computing chip, last 24 hours? I mean, you guys seen this? It has the ability to complete calculations of a particular problem in 5 minutes that would take the traditional, currently available supercomputer, a word I don't know that I've ever seen expressed in terms of the length of time, equivalent to 10 centillion years. That's one with 25 zeros after it, by the way. That's longer than the universe has been around. And so there is some talk and at least theory about could this span universes, multi-universal, which gets kind of wonky. But here's where I'm going with that. There's going to be, it's happening now, let's start with you, Danny, an intersection of quantum computing and artificial intelligence, which doesn't diminish the need and the value for graphics processing units, which is what NVIDIA makes. They're optimized, purpose-built for that. We're going to have an intersection.
Oh, for sure. It's already intersected. I think quantum right now is where artificial intelligence was 4 or 5 years ago. Nobody really knows about it, talks about it right now. AI wasn't such a hot topic 4 or 5 years ago, but some really smart people knew that it was going to be a really big deal, and some people made some bets, and those bets have now paid off. That's kind of where quantum is right now. Nobody really knows what the applications are going to be, but they know that quantum is going to solve really big problems. What we can do in Mississippi is attract some of those, great quantum researchers to some of our universities, because how great would that be if some of those problems are solved in Mississippi? Now, people that really know about quantum, there's not a lot. There's not a lot of those people yet. So it's, they have a lot of people recruiting them to a lot of different places. So it's all about bringing the resources here, building the resources here to make it attractive for those folks to come and start solving the problems that potentially quantum could solve.
What's Microsoft's position, to the extent you can tell us today?
Well, we work super closely looking at future technologies and how they may come down the pipeline. Actually, doing quite a bit of research within the quantum space, but absolutely the nexus of quantum computing and artificial intelligence, I think, is going to create lots of new scientific breakthroughs. New chemistry, new elements. To be able to create the environment for new material sciences that will hopefully lower the need and demand for power that we're seeing. If there is new substrates that can work, so I think it's a very promising area. I think we're also in a global race to really be in the spot of which country is really going to land quantum, first. I think it creates a whole new subset of potential problems, down the road, and really, I think, elevates the need for cybersecurity and posturing across the board. So see lots of promise, but also need the guardrails and areas to make sure we will start shifting that conversation of not whether something can or cannot be built, it's whether it should be built. And are we working diligently to make sure that we keep all stakeholders in mind when products are being built?
Decryption and the power of quantum computing to decrypt our current encryption.
Every existing.
Right. So goodbye cybersecurity. All that investment, all of that technology would be essentially diminished, rendered worthless. And that's why there's kind of a race going on, as you indicated, certainly. Yeah, sure.
Just to double click on what Danny and our friends from Microsoft are talking about, in the $10 million that was part of a tranche of $40 million that AWS, we had in the AWS special legislation, we set aside $10 million to kind of advance the thinking in AI, but also in advanced compute. And Courtney and I are partnering right now in an effort to put out an RFP to all of our institutions of higher education to try to figure out which one of those could partner with us to use that money to bring in endowed chairs, advanced faculty. The challenge when we did our state technology innovation plan that I realized very quickly was when you looked at all the ornaments on the tree that were being recommended, and then you look at what Mississippi's baseline conditions were for engineering, we're very small. I mean, I went to the University of Illinois, I graduated out there. They're going to graduate 350 undergraduate civil engineers alone. Electrical engineers, almost 1,000. Nuclear engineers in their PhD program, over 300. We don't even produce a nuclear engineer in the state of Mississippi. We get turf battles between our institutions of higher learning of who's going to do what program. We had fist fights over whether Mississippi State could open an engineering school on the coast. There are no engineering schools at Southern Miss right now, and that's one of the reasons why we're having a difficult time recruiting major industry into Hattiesburg, because we don't have an engineering school down the street. As a matter of public policy, if we're going to have to steal the talent. We're going to have to buy the talent, because just by sheer scale, we're not producing enough through the normal course of our matriculation of our students coming through K through 12, which, by the way, those demographics are on the downswing. So if there's one takeaway on workforce that I think we need to talk about very honestly in Mississippi, is how can we start stealing sheep? How do we build a cluster around some of this advanced technology that's going to attract the greatest minds away from Stanford and MIT and into Southern Miss, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, or Jackson State, or wherever? If we don't have this honest conversation, 10 years from now, we're going to be sitting in this panel having exactly the same discussion about talent. Because the reason why Austin has grown was largely because they had an anchor in Dell about 30, 40 years ago, and that was the anchor that built that cluster. So I've got a lot of legislators in this room, okay? Let's not have this conversation again 4 years from now. Let's talk about which advanced quantum compute guys or ladies we recruited away from MIT and endowed here. And we've got some of that money to start, and we're going to try with the $10 million we have, but that's not going to be enough if we really want to make an impact.
That's great feedback, Bill. And I can tell you, hiring technology people going back to the 80s, that recruiting people into the state was the only alternative because we just aren't producing enough. That's not to say that who we produce aren't fantastic, and we try to scarf up all of those that we could, but it's a numbers game. It's not enough. And I think we have a good story to tell. We just got to do a better job of telling it. And I would suggest with the lawmakers here, maybe we need to be thinking about what can we do, perhaps, with law. Maybe it's tax incentives or other opportunities. We have some of those right now for teachers and medical professionals. Maybe we need to extend that into the technology world as well. I'm looking at the lawmakers, of course. advocating for something. But I think you're right. And it's a chicken and egg deal. These folks here that make these investments, they look for the availability to fill in that bucket in the ecosystem. But we've got to figure out a way to provide it. So all of that has to be going on at the same time. So I think that's great feedback. John, when you think about what is needed from an entrepreneurial standpoint, what would incentivize, we have fantastic graduates coming out of our world-class universities that often do compete, as Bill said, but we're still producing those. And it always frustrates me that many of them are across the state line before the ink dries on their diploma. What can we do to really encourage entrepreneurship, for them to stay here and launch businesses using these talents and these skills they've gained?
I think first, as you talked about we talked about the resources, the skill base. We have, I think, in Mississippi State, I know we have a great engineering program, computer science program, and now they've got AI, cybersecurity. Matter of fact, my youngest son is getting his PhD on Tuesday in cybersecurity at Mississippi State. So, and he's in Austin, Texas, and he could have gone to a lot of different places because of the status of cybersecurity at Mississippi State. He came here. And so, but I think the skill sets and building that, I know when I was recruiting for the development center here that I put in place here in 2006, 2007, I was surprised that we had no more computer science students graduating at that particular time. I was thinking it was always a lot more, but it wasn't. It was like 20 or 25 or 30 that particular semester. That's grown. And I'm encouraged by these larger companies here looking at Mississippi State. And I would say to you is, please come, okay? Because I think there's opportunity. The infrastructure's here, and I think we've got the support of the state, first of all. Secondly, I like to say that Innovate Mississippi has done a great job. The Bulldog Angel Network has done a great job of supporting the East Center, Entrepreneurship Center. I've served on the advisory board, served on the technical advisory board for engineering at Mississippi State. So we've got a lot of good things going for us here. And so I would encourage all of us to partake of that and also continue to grow as we're, need to do. And we've got to recognize and not be afraid to invest in technology as opposed to hard assets. It's easy to, I've found in investing, raising money in Mississippi, a lot of people say, well, what's the collateral? What happens if technology doesn't work? What happens? What about the hard asset? So, but I think we're getting more used to and more willing to invest in technology today, the last 3 or 4 or 5 years that I've been here.
Kevin, what about Ocean Aero? Is your organization, when you look through the chart, a lot of Mississippians on that chart? I know you're recruiting from everywhere you can find the skills to meet your needs in your company, but how do you think about that?
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. We're thrilled to have mostly Mississippians on our chart, which is, I think, John mentioned an important word in kind of opportunity, which is really how I think about it. So, when we go and we recruit talent, generally speaking, really smart people want the opportunity to work on really hard problems. And certainly the money's great and, other components are great, but if you provide people the opportunity to work on some of these new initiatives and, truly world-moving items, they're going to leap at it. And I've been stunned, as we've recruited great talent on the coast, how many native Mississippians say, man, this is fantastic that this opportunity is here. And again, with respect, they don't want to go to New Orleans. They don't want to go to Mobile, but they will, if that's where the opportunities are, they will. So the more that we're able to kind of incubate those opportunities for them, all things equal, people would love to stay, and I think they would love to, come into the state. So again, I think it all kind of starts around nurturing those opportunities for people and letting them know that it's out there.
Appreciate that. Bill, something that has certainly been injected into the endeavor of economic development is regional partnerships and regionalization of the effort. For the most part, that's done within the boundaries of our state. Is this something we ought to be thinking about outside of our boundaries and perhaps collaborating with neighboring states, especially given some of these really super-sized projects that we're seeing?
Yeah, and it does actually exist already today. We're members of the Four States Aerospace Alliance on aerospace technology with Louisiana, Alabama, and Florida, although that's kind of changing the context around that. That was started up to support Airbus's attraction to Mobile.
Yeah.
So that's working. We have the Partnership for Stennis and Michoud, which is a regional collaborative with Louisiana, focused on the commercial space and government space sector. There's also a major regional cluster across the coast right now inside the state with on the blue economy, which Ocean Aero participates in, which quite frankly is the model for a tech cluster in the state at the moment. We have a very strong partnership with the Memphis Chamber of Commerce up in DeSoto and Marshall County. They were instrumental in helping us secure the Amplify Cell Technology project and are actually helping us implement that. So those cross-border regional collaboratives already exist. What I think we need to do a better job in Mississippi is doing better regional collaboration in Mississippi. You know, given what we see coming down the pike, there's no reason why the Mississippi Delta couldn't be the digital Delta. It could be branded as such. You know, these big, especially the big compute, are very high capex, high energy intensive, but relatively low job, high skill projects. So if you wanted to go into an area where you didn't have a lot of people and have a lot of impact, there is no reason why the 16 counties in the Mississippi Delta shouldn't be a region, a super region, making that the focus of their next generation life. That's not going to start in Jackson. That's going to have to start with those community leaders getting together and recognizing the potential that they have. And I know Commissioner Stamps is motivating that. I think you ought to comment on what you're trying to do there.
Well, I appreciate it, Bill. Effective partnerships are critical, but the focus that Bill has brought to our efforts has been immense. Even Commissioner Brown, we got him to ascend into the Southeastern Utility Regulators. He's now the vice president. He'll be the president next year. Georgia Public Service Commissioner, Commissioner Pridemore, has appointed him to the National Board of Directors and also appointed me as the vice president of the National Water Committee. So our regional partnerships are growing and intensifying across the South because the population of America is moving to the Southeast. Yeah. So that's spurring that leadership coming from the South. But even all the way down to our young folks. When we look our young folks in the eyes, we got to be able to tell them that we're partnering with you. We know young folks aren't buying $300,000-$400,000 houses. Well, we got to build condos and coffee shops because that's what they're leaving to go participate in an urban economy, an urban environment, an urban culture. So we must produce in every urban space a better urban space across the entire state because it's not just about the workforce having somewhere to work. You got to have somewhere for the workforce to live and play. And they may not want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. They want a condo and a coffee shop and a dog they can put in their purse. Now, we're not in the business of selling dogs and purses, but we can produce. We can be. So it's a job of the good folks in this room to produce some condos and coffee shops and some stores that sell dogs and purses. And that's what we have to do is in Jackson, we can drop 1,000 units in Jackson right now and not miss a beat. We can do 500 in Meridian and not miss a beat. Same thing in Vicksburg or Greenville. But the other deeper partnership is the example that we sit with Amazon. That's an effective economic development project in Madison County, but it led to the largest investment in the history of the Mississippi Delta on power production. That's right. And that's going to lead to manufacturing and the ability for that community to produce more jobs. So all these things that we're doing, we just have to do more of what we're doing and learn as we go and do it better because there's no reason why we couldn't do, 5 or 6 more opportunities like Amazon across the state, but then put the power production in places like Port Gibson, or put the power production in places like Copiah, and just other places across the state where we can produce more power to be more effective and competitive.
I totally agree. Danny mentioned earlier that I shared with her last night that I'm a fan of the CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, and I track him regularly and learn so much from him. But he predicts that over the next 3 to 5 years, we'll likely see $1.5 to $2 trillion invested in new data center footprint. And that doesn't take into account the trillions that will be spent on new power generation and transmission necessary, whatever the form and source of that power is. My experience in business, Danny, is that big companies like to do business with big companies. They have a greater comfort level in general when it's available and in their choices. I'm just wondering if this collaborative model that Bill was talking about, where economic developers and states collaborate, or certainly even within our state, regions collaborate, if that makes a difference when companies like NVIDIA are considering an investment.
I think so. I'd say, first of all, yes, what you said earlier about when you were a business owner and, you had folks that were partners and competitors.
Yeah.
We have a lot of that with the bigger companies.
Absolutely.
And we really see a lot of opportunities in startups. We have a whole program, the Inception program, where we're giving free resources to startups. And we think, there's going to be a lot of AI startups. The new startup is going to have AI. So it's important for us to invest in startups. In fact, Jensen kind of hand-delivered the first computer to OpenAI when ChatGPT was born. So we're always looking for, where is the next OpenAI? Is that going to come out of some researchers at a university? Is that going to come out of, some sort of startup incubator system? And to your question about the regional partnerships, absolutely. We see a lot of other kind of states doing that. A handful of states coming together and creating central infrastructure for, whatever those states are. We were just brainstorming last night. Could we do a Gulf Coast collaborative and have a data center? Let's look at Louisiana and Alabama, and guess who's in the middle? We could have a data center here in Mississippi, and it's to a point. I think Bill made this point earlier. Is let's figure out what the industries are. I like Alabama and Louisiana because the industries are similar in all three of these states. There's manufacturing, energy, and there's a big emphasis on cybersecurity. So I think it's a great idea, and I think it kind of gets to a bigger question and something we should all be thinking about is. Yeah, we're here today talking about how to make Mississippi great and competitive, but let's think about how to make the country competitive. There's a lot of competitive threats with some of our adversaries, especially in terms of cyber. So, embracing AI and doing these kind of multi-state collaborations are the key to that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Courtney, when we think about where to place all these people that are going through workforce development, just gaining new skills, acquiring new skills, is there anything we should be thinking about with respect to the private sector to incentivize them to bring on some of these people as employees? Do we have a good flow of communication there? And is there anything perhaps our legislature should act on to encourage that?
It can always be better. The communication can always be better. I think one of the things that we found is where we can invert the process and send people to training once they're hired. It goes better and better, or at least give them some kind of resources while they're in training. It keeps them there, helps them stay focused. I think all the efforts to professionalize training, we don't want to, in these higher skilled environments, you can't just throw people on the line and say good luck. We're gonna have somebody come by and check on you every so often. So formalizing that, professionalizing that, we're trying to make our policies more friendly to that, but also to force those kinds of conversations. It's also about exposing people to these things that may not have just naturally operated in the environments, and teaching them what the companies do. It's cool that companies make widgets and they create these technologies and do all this, but how does that relate to the individual person? Meaning, if I'm going to go work for a Whisper, what am I going to do there? I see the end result, but what am I going to do every day? So there's a lot of efforts right now through our career coaching, through working with our adults, working through how to attack them a little bit differently, but also to say, this is what the job is, period, and here's the skill sets and the competencies that you have to come on board. And then working with our companies where we can to get them employed, train them, get them good enough to be slightly productive when they get there, but get them there faster. And it's an expensive game. Training is an expensive game. And so it's what's your comfort level, what can we do? And just we have to be really pragmatic about that, because you can spend a whole lot of money doing nothing if you're not careful.
Can I add to that?
Sure, please.
So I think another really important point on that is focusing on industries that really need people, because you can tailor the training to industries that really need AI, and the big example is cybersecurity. So cybersecurity is my background, which is why I bring it up a lot, but cybersecurity is an industry where there is a people problem. We do not have enough cybersecurity.
10 to 1, I think.
What?
I think it's 10 to 1 last I checked.
10 to 1?
The number of jobs that we need to be filled versus the number of people skilled to work those jobs.
Yes, and Mississippi is actually looking good as far as the average, the country average. But every state, there's a cybersecurity shortage of people. Also, cybersecurity is an industry that needs AI. When I was in cyber, there was a saying, you can't bring a human to a machine fight. So this is a machine versus machine. And when you start to bring humans into a machine fight, you lose the cyber war, which is kind of what's happening in the US right now. If you look at the number of breaches, we're losing in cyber because we don't have as many people as our adversaries, and we're not using AI as much as our adversaries are. So if we could tailor some AI training for cybersecurity professionals, then these folks are going to have immediate jobs as soon as they get whatever certifications. So I think looking at industries where it makes sense, then it's kind of a no-brainer.
In fact, your CEO says you've got right at about 30,000 employees now, that the plan is to add 20,000 to scale that to 50,000, and expects that they will be utilizing 100 million AI assistants. 100 million, which is incredible. Zuckerberg says it's more like 100 billion is what he predicts where we're headed, that the national workforce will be using. What does Mississippi need to think about with respect to preparing our workforce for these 20,000 new jobs? I mean, this is going to be a wide spectrum of skills required.
Yeah, it's a lot more than 20,000 jobs at NVIDIA, right? Because if you get training on NVIDIA, then any company that's doing AI is going to hire you, because any company that's doing AI is working with NVIDIA. So I think it goes back to what I just said, right? Tailoring it to the industries that are in the state. And getting those folks trained, and having the workforce ready for whatever companies are going to invest here.
Bill Cork, what sort of roadblocks are we perhaps dealing with in forging these private-public partnerships that I think are going to be more critical and more represented in the future?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think Mississippi does a very good job of mobilizing its government and academic institutions, but and I know this is a fan of some people, but I caught on to this term, the triple helix, right? Which is, in fact, I think I first heard the speech at Ocean Aero's CEO when we announced the project down there. He talked about the real benefit to Ocean Aero's existence was the triple helix between the government, academia, and industry. Mississippi's always done a really good job of of the academic and government focus. We understand what our challenges are, and we usually try to get people around the table that can help find solutions. The missing link has been the commercial industries at scale. And companies like NVIDIA, which we're working on a partnership with, Microsoft, who's already been baked in to our state, working on our, working with Innovate Mississippi to help pioneer new entrepreneurs and to take advantage of that. These partnerships are absolutely critical. It's absolutely a core focus of the governor is to find these strategic partnerships. It's why we wrapped ourselves around AWS with $40 million of additional money they didn't ask for, so that we could do our part as the state in completing that helix. So, you know, the challenges are immense, but they're only limited by our ability to develop the relationships, to tell our story, and to then provide value. I mean, we were just talking with NVIDIA today about what does success mean in a partnership with the company on workforce. And they're like, we just want to know how many people we can train in a given year or over a period of time. It's like my boss wants to know, are we moving the needle on those people? My boss is a numbers guy. He very much appreciates the fact that he wants to see what's the number of impact, what's the cash impact, the people impacts. So I think if we just stay focused on how does it help Mississippians and what kind of return on investment we can get, communicate that well to companies like NVIDIA or Microsoft spot that, and they're like, we want to be part of it. It's what AWS spotted in us too on the speed to market play. So yeah, more work to do, Gerard, but I think we understand how to win in that debate. We just got to continue to execute.
And I think we've proven that with some of the recent successes we've had. We're about out of time. Anybody else? DeKeith, you were about to say something.
Mississippi has shocked me. When I first got elected to the legislature several years ago, I had all kinds of thoughts in my head about what to expect, what we're going to go through, but we're really turning the page for Mississippi's history. While we pay respect to our past and learn from our past, some of the lower level divisive things we've had to endure, the first vote I took in the legislature was to change the flag. And then to move forward in the Public Service Commission, now in the executive branch. In this whole year, I've not been bogged down with one low-level divisive conversation, because on our side of the ball now, we're focused on the opportunities of Mississippi's future, where we can go and how we can work together to produce a better Mississippi and a better America. So I'm overjoyed with where we're going, and I look forward to continuing to participate.
Fantastic. I just want to part with this to follow up on that. I was born and raised in Jackson, in West Jackson, and I've witnessed that. I've lived here my whole life except for about 6 years where I traveled the country working for what's now Accenture. And I see us as a more united state than a divided state than ever before. Does that mean that we're perfect? No. That we don't have challenges that we've got to keep working on, but I just remember things when I was a kid that are really horrible, that just don't happen anymore. And you look in this room, we have a diverse attendance here that I think is representative of our state, and I think our best days are indeed ahead. Please give it up for this fantastic panel. They've been so good today. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Hello. I know we got some people going to get out of here. I just want to thank everybody for coming. On behalf of Chair Ford, Chair Zuber, and myself, I want to thank a few people. Number one, I want to thank industry. I want to thank you guys for your investment and your faith in Mississippi, past, present, and especially future. I think our best days are in front of us, as we said. I want to thank the public sector, guys, starting with the leadership of the governor and MDA. Thank you guys for building the trunk and the tree. The analogy is great. It plays, and I'm going to use it. I'll give you credit twice, then I'm going to steal it. But thank you for that. It plays. The ornaments are coming in a big way, so thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. Mr. Gilbert, thank you very much for emceeing today. It's our pleasure to have you. I want to thank the tech guys in the back. Everything's great. I think we threw y'all some curveballs. Thank you for adapting. And Tech Summit, I'm glad Tech went off without a hitch, pun intended. Thank you again, Holmes Community College, for allowing us and hosting us today. We're very honored that you allowed us to do that. That being said, I think we're adjourned. Thank you all for being here. We'll be up here. We would like to get a picture with the group, if you don't mind, down here.